Okay, so we're diving straight into a pretty deep puzzle from the heart of the Bible, and it all hinges on the names of God. It turns out getting a handle on these names might just change how you see reality itself.
It all kicks off with this single, really powerful verse from Exodus. God tells Moses that the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they knew God by one name, El Shaddai. But they didn't know God by another name, the four-letter one, YHVH. And believe me, this is way more than just a name change. It's a huge shift in revelation.
Right away, this throws up some huge questions. The ancient commentators, they actually call YHVH the measure of truth. But hold on a second. If all of God's names are true, how can one be the ultimate standard? What's really going on here? What is the actual difference between these two ways of seeing the divine? Let's unpack that.
All right, so first things first, let's tackle the paradox that's hiding right inside that phrase, the measure of truth. I mean, think about it, right? The word measure implies you're setting a boundary. You're defining a limit. But the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is understood to represent the infinite, the very essence of God that is completely beyond any and all limitation. So, how can the name for the limitless be described by a word that means to limit? It feels like a total contradiction.
To even begin to crack this, we've got to go back. We need to understand the name the patriarchs did know, El Shaddai. And as we're about to see, this name is packing a double meaning. So here are the two faces of El Shaddai. The first meaning comes from the Hebrew word dai, which means enough. At creation, this was like the divine power hitting the brakes on the expanding universe, saying, okay, that's enough, setting the boundaries of the physical world. But for the patriarchs, dai also meant something else, sufficiency. This is the divine power that is sufficient, or more than enough, to provide for every single creature within that structured world. So when you put it all together, El Shaddai represents this perfect balance. It's the power that creates a finite system and, at the very same time, provides limitlessly for everything inside that system. It's both the author of the rules and the absolute master of the game.
So this is all a bit abstract, right? Where do we actually see this difference in action? Well, we can see it really clearly by looking at how these names relate to something we can all get: miracles.
The miracles the patriarchs experienced were tied to El Shaddai, and these are what you might call miracles clothed in nature. Think of a barren woman conceiving in old age, or finding a well in the desert. Yeah, they're extraordinary, totally miraculous, but they still operate through the laws of nature. But YHVH? That name is associated with miracles that are just off the charts. They are openly beyond nature, like the splitting of the sea, events that just completely suspend the rules of reality as we know them. But this brings up a really fascinating question. If you want to reveal your power, why would you perform these subtle miracles that someone could just dismiss as a coincidence? Why not just split the sea every time? The very fact that there are two types of miracles suggests there's a deeper structure to reality, one we really need to understand. And to answer that, we need to bring in two key concepts from Jewish mysticism that explain how an infinite God creates a finite world. And you're going to want to pay attention here, because this is basically the engine room of our entire explainer.
The framework is actually surprisingly simple. It starts with this infinite, formless energy called or light. Now, to create a world, that light needs to be given some kind of shape. And that's the job of the kalim, or vessels. Think of these as the laws of physics, the structures of reality. So creation is simply the process of that infinite light pouring into these vessels, and what you get is the finite, ordered world we all experience. And this brings us full circle. The name El Shaddai perfectly describes this whole dynamic. The enough aspect, that's the power of the vessels creating the limits. The sufficient aspect, that's the power of the light that perfectly fills those vessels, providing for everything inside them. Okay, now that we have this framework of light and vessels, we can finally solve our initial paradox and understand the true mind-blowing power of the name YHVH. So if El Shaddai is the name for the relationship between the light and the vessel, Yah-Heh-Vav-Heh is the name for the light itself. It refers to the infinite divine essence that exists before and completely beyond any structure, any law of nature, any vessel whatsoever. It's the source of all reality. Which brings us right back to our original question. If this name represents the utterly limitless, why is it called the measure of truth? Why use a word that implies a boundary?
And here is the resolution. And it's a real mind bender. The ultimate measure of infinite power isn't the ability to exist without limits.
The truest measure of its power is its ability to pour itself into the most finite vessels, our physical world, even a single person, and still remain completely, absolutely infinite. So here's the final distinction. El Shaddai is the reality we normally experience, infinite light contained and defined by the vessels of nature. But the revelation of Yahweh is the recognition that this infinite light is not diminished by its container. Its true, unbound nature can be found right here, within the very fabric of our limited existence. And that's why the miracles of YHVH shatter the laws of nature. They are these moments when the light reveals that it isn't bound by the vessel at all. The ultimate goal, then, is a time when the entire finite world becomes like a transparent lens, constantly revealing the infinite light it contains. And this leaves us with a provocative thought for our own lives. What if our limitations, our challenges, our circumstances aren't just constraints? What if they are the very vessels designed to contain and ultimately reveal a light that is truly boundless?